Hello, in this build video I'm going to cover an anti-werewolf PvP build that I am calling the Silver Bullet. I conjured this up to try to combat the prevalence of werewolves in PvP right now. Werewolf just got a recent update and they've been somewhat problematic because they're quite overpowered, so I want to cover kind of the nucleus of where I started conjuring up this build. I'm going to get on my werewolf armory slot here just to show you where I kind of started thinking about this. Whenever somebody is in werewolf form, they are going to take 15% more damage from poison. This does not show up on the passives for the werewolf, so this could be somewhat unknown for some players. If you go into the passives here of the Lycanthropy, this poison vulnerability is not listed here. You actually have to go into the character sheet and look at the Lycanthropy buff to actually see it. So some people might not be aware of that, not sure, but that's where I got the idea for this build. So I am calling this the Silver Bullet. Really quickly before I get into this, as is the case with any build, the player is going to determine the outcome of how this build performs. This is just basically going to provide you the tools to use. If you're proficient in PvP, then this should help you quite a bit. There are some pretty substantial statistics on this build, and so if you're a proficient player, then this build is going to serve you well. So let's go into the character. First off, I will show you I did a little something different with this build, and I focused on the style on this. As you can see in the screen here, I'll turn on my Vestige mirror add-on here so I can give you a better screenshot of what it looks like when it reloads here. We will look at the style of the build in case anybody's curious of that. Essentially, I have gone with the Silver Dawn style on the build because they are werewolf hunters, so to be kind of lore accurate. As you can see, the maces are pretty nasty looking. Everything is Silver Dawn. I dyed the pieces with Cold Harbor Ash Black, and then I have Chevalic Silver and Champion Red on the pieces that you can dye those. So those are the colors that I used on this. Those are the styles, so I'll leave that up here for a second so you can screenshot that if you want to match the style. That's what this is looking like. And so then we'll go into the build statistics and all that. I'll just pull up this screen. It works really well. Let me get rid of that chat window. There we go. Okay, so here we go. I am a Dark Elf Necromancer with the Lover Mundus, and I have subclassed this out. I kept the Gravelord skill line, and I have subclassed into Dragon Knight Earthen Heart and the Arcanist Herald of the Tome. And I am using Lavafoot Soup for the max stamina and stamina recovery. You could change your health, your food out for possibly something that's got other statistics, but I feel like having a big stamina bar with stamina recovery is the most helpful. So let me just go into the character sheet here. Some of these are not going to be buffed up, but I'll read you what the buffed up stats are. When you get buffed up, the health is always 29,400. The max stamina on the build is 25,917. with a max magicka of 17,089. The stamina recovery with Lava Foot Soup, and if you activate the Mystic Siphon, then it will go up to 1,398 for the recovery. Also in combat, let me just get my ultimate up to 500 there so that shows more accurately. Okay, so the health recovery is up and over 2,000, as you can see. With the Mystic Siphon, that will go up even higher to 2160. And then the magicka recovery is a little bit low, but when you have Mystic Siphon activated, it goes up to 664. So we'll talk about that in a little bit here. Weapon damage, when you are fully buffed up on this build, can get up to close to 6,000. It's 5,968 weapon damage. The weapon critical goes up to 26.4%, which is not super high, but I focused on penetration more than critical chance on this build. And then we have a critical resistance of 1,744. The penetration, when you get the Gravelords activated, let's go ahead and show you that, goes up to 10,929. And then our resistances on the build are 30,054. So that's pretty tanky for running around. And then the penetration is really nice. And so we'll go into the gear sets now. I'll do this one by one so that everybody can follow along. I am using the Perfected Maelstrom dual wield set. This is called the Perfected Cruel Flurry. And what this does, when you hit the skill that procs this set, it puts 1,690 weapon and spell damage on your single target damage over time abilities. So if you're not familiar with that, what that is, those are the sticky dots that you can apply to enemies, which include three of the eight status effects, which are burning, hemorrhage, and also poisoned. So that is really going to ramp up those three damage over time status effects with this setup. So I have two charged maces, both with poison damage. I really wanted to lean into the poison damage because of the werewolf vulnerability. So that's what I placed here. On the back bar, I have the Dragonstar Arena Perfected Caustic Arrow. This, when you hit poison injection, is going to ramp up your poison damage by 300, or excuse me, ramp up your damage done to that enemy by 330 weapon and spell damage. And that's procced by a poison ability as well. So that is really going to ramp up your damage really well. Then we have a two-piece monster set. The Nibene Bay Battle Reeves Visage is the, by the way, the bow is infused with a weapon damage glyph. I forgot to mention that. And then I have Nibene Bay Battle Reeves Visage. That is a heavy reinforced with triglyph. If you're not familiar with this, what this does, the one piece gives you 424 critical resistance. So a little bit of resistance if somebody critically strikes against you. It'll shave off that much. Then we have, when you are forcefully moved via a pull, knockback, or teleport, you gain a damage shield that is equal to 17,379. And this is, it lasts for 6 seconds, and the battle shield is not affected by battle spirit. And so this can happen once every 14 seconds. So a lot of times when I'm in Cyrodiil, I like to just take resources for getting AP and gaining level 1 for the transmute crystals. And a common thing in that activity is the Dragon Knight will chain you in closer to them. When that happens, this damage shield is going to proc. It is really helpful for melting down those resource enemies. So this is really helpful for that. So the other two-piece is a medium reinforced with a triglyph as well. So that's the monster set. So the head is heavy reinforced with a triglyph. Shoulders are medium reinforced with a triglyph. Then I have a one-piece heavy trainee. It's called the Gallant Chain. This is the specific piece you can get for doing a mission in Stras Makai, but it is a armor of the trainee. If you want to just gain this piece without using transmute crystals, then you can go do that mission. It does not drop in gold, but you can gold it out once you get it. There's a mission in Stras Makai where you can gain this piece for free, if that's something you're interested in. But this is reinforced with a triglyph, and it is there to give me 1,454 maximum health. Then for the waist, I have a Deadly Strike Nirnhoned triglyph piece. This is going to increase our damage over time and channeled attacks by 15%. I don't believe I have a channeled ability on this build, but the damage over time is going to be increased by 15%. And then we have a Deadly Strike Nirnhoned Gloves triglyph, a Druid's Braid craftable set for the legs. This is heavy reinforced with the triglyph, and this will give us 1,206 maximum health for the one piece. And then we have a reinforced triglyph medium Deadly Strike boots, and then 2 pieces of Deadly Strike on the jewelry. This is an infused weapon damage necklace and an infused weapon damage Deadly Strike ring. And then we have the Shattered Paths signet infused with a weapon damage as well. So to go over the champion points really quickly, we've got, let me go into the battle scrolls that has a really nice display for this. So as you can see, the blue tree, I have Deadly Aim, Thaumaturge, Force of Nature, and Wrathful Strikes. If you're not familiar with what those do, Deadly Aim increases your single target damage by 6%. Thaumaturge increases your damage over time by 6%. Force of Nature will increase your penetration by 660 for every status effect that you have applied to the enemy. And then Wrathful Strikes will increase your weapon and spell damage from your skills by 205. So that is the blue tree. The red tree is Boundless Vitality, which gives you maximum health. Fortified will give you armor. And then Bastion is really important. That gives you 15% increased damage to enemies that are shielded. And also, if you have a shield, it will be 15% bigger. So when that Nibene Bay procs, it'll be larger than what is shown without this slotted. I currently have it slotted. So that value that I cited earlier is actually being increased by Bastion. So if you put it on and you don't see that big of a shield, that's probably why. Slot the Bastion and it should match. And then I also have Strategic Reserve. This is a flex spot for health recovery. Just a little caveat here. When you go into a PvP zone and you have Battle Spirit active, Strategic Reserve is not going to be as potent because your health recovery gets nerfed in PvP zones. So just be mindful of that. It's not going to be as high as I showed on the character sheet because I'm not in Cyrodiil right now. So it might be wise to change out Strategic Reserve for something more beneficial. That's just a flex spot, really. And then we have the green tree. Doesn't really matter. The main thing you want to keep on there for PvP especially is helpful is Gifted Rider and War Mount, so that if you're running in between resources or keeps, that is going to get you there faster, as well as the Steed's Blessing. Those are really important to put on for PvP. So a little bit more than just a PvP, or excuse me, a PvE area, but the green tree is quite helpful for that portion. So I want to cover status effects on this build in 2 categories. I want to talk about the proc chance that is on the build, as well as the damage modifiers, because that is kind of the basis of what I built this around. and I'm also going to touch on the damage that this will do to werewolves specifically. So I'm going to talk about the status effect proc chance, but before I get into that, I'm going to talk about how status effects are applied. If you're not familiar with how you can find this, you can go into your inventory and go up to where your Mundus stone is, and then there's a button that you can press on your platform. On PlayStation, it is the X button, and that is where you can look at view more information. This will take you into the combat tutorial area. It's a really quick way to do this. Go to the very top, and then status effects are the third one down. And specifically what we're going to be covering in this discussion here, this is just a display of what status effects are and what they do. But more importantly, we're going to talk about how these are applied. And so this section right here is how you apply status effects. So these are the base percentage chances. So anytime in the game you see an increase to apply a status effect, that number has to be applied to these tables here. I've done a status effect video in the past. I will link that in the description if you're curious. But so any increase to this stuff has to be applied here. So your weapon enchantment glyph is 20% normally. We'll just use that as the base, but if you want to screenshot or write these numbers down, or if you're on the game, you can check these out directly by finding the method that I just showed. But I'm just going to cite the weapon enchantment as one that we can call back because it's easy to remember. It's 20%. So we're going to go into the several points of increasing status effect chance on the build. So if you go to the champion tree and you go to the blue tree and you go inside the extended might, these passives right here are extremely important to fill in. You're going to want to make sure you have flawless ritual and battle mastery filled in. That's going to increase your chance to apply a status effect by 60%. So that is very important. Also, your damage that you do by those types are going to increase by 100 if you fill in the War Mage and Mighty passives as well. So keep that in mind. That's very important. You make sure that you implement those. So that's a 60% increase of a chance. And then we go into the front bar weapons here. We have 2 charged maces. Each one of them is 117.5% increase of a chance. So that is a total of 235% chance. And then additionally to that, I have the Herald of the Tome skill line on the build, which has the passive Psychic Lesion, which is going to increase your status effect chance by 55%. So if you add all of those up total, that is a increase of 350% to apply a status effect. So if you're talking about just your enchantment alone, I'll just go back into that table really quickly because it's not that difficult to get to. So just the enchantment alone with the 350% increased chance, that jumps from 20% up to 90. So it's an almost definite. If you light attack, you're going to apply poison. Then you have single target direct damage, which is 45% increase. And then you have AoE direct damage. The base chance was 5%. It is now 22.5%. And then we have single target dot damage was 3%. With the 350% increased chance, that becomes 13.5% chance. So your single target damage over time has a 13.5% chance to apply a status effect. That's pretty large. And then AoE dots, if they were 1%, and they become 4.5% from that. So now we're going to talk about the damage amplifiers itself. So that was the chance to apply it has been increased by 350%. And now we're going to talk about the increase in damage itself. So first off, we have the Deadly Strike, damage over time. This is going to increase poison, hemorrhage, and burning by 15%. So that is also going to stack with the Necromancer skill line having two things that increase damage over time. The Rapid Rot passive as well as the Gravelord's Sacrifice is going to increase it by 15%. In addition to that, we also have the Herald of the Tome passive, the Psychic Legion. In addition to the status effect chance increase, this also increases your status effects by 15%. So that is a total of 55% increase to status effects. And then in addition to that, we have on the build the Shattered Paths Signet. While it is fully buffed up, it is going to do 85% damage to players. So any of the NPCs around the resources, they're going to take the full 170% damage increase from this, but a player only gets half of that, so it's 85%. And it's multiplicative to all the other bonuses that I referred to. So keep that in mind. You have 55% in those initial damage increases, and then 85 multiplicative against players on top of that. So with the increase to werewolves taking 15% more damage to poison, that is really going to be quite damaging to them, because I've got a couple of logs here I'll show you. I was taking some Cyrodiil resources to kind of just get an idea of what the build would do. Here you go. Here's the poisoned, as you could see, was doing 2.9 thousand per second. Vault was doing 2.8 thousand per second. Bloodthirst 2.3. Hemorrhage 1.3. Poison injection 827. So this can stack up quite a bit. Those, for the most part, are single target damage over times. So that is really going to ramp up hard. The poison status effect is really hitting like a truck on this. As you can see, I got a tick for 11,000 when it did do a critical strike. The average tick on that is 5,000. That is a lot for a status effect. So this can do quite a bit of damage. Very, very strong. So I'll go over the skills because I don't think I covered that yet. So the skills on the front bar, I have Barb Trap. This is going to trigger Minor Force as well as Hemorrhage status effect on the initial hit. Also, Mystic Siphon. This is going to give us a lot of damage from the activation of a corpse, which you can get from Gravelord's Sacrifice. This will also proc Major Savagery and Prophecy, increasing our critical strike chance by 12%, and it will also increase our damage while having it slotted by 3%. And when it is siphoning from a corpse, it will increase our recoveries by 150. Again, when you're in a PvP zone, that is going to be nerfed. Then we have Bloodthirst. This is our spammable that is going to proc our arena weapon, that Cruel Flurry. This does bleed damage and heals us for 34% of the damage caused. Also, Venom Skull. This is a really good distance poison damaging skill that will increase by 50% on the third cast of a Necromancer ability. You'll see it glow a lot like a Crystal Frag does on a Sorcerer. This will glow when it's ready to hit for that 50% increase. Then we have Recuperative Treatises. This is here to give us major brutality and sorcery. It does magic damage, and it also gives us some recoveries back. And it will generate a crux, which will increase our critical damage by 12% as well. On the front bar ultimate, we have Temporal Guard. This is here to give us minor protection passively, as well as gain the passives from the Psijic Order. So if you don't know, when you have a Psijic Order ability slotted and you have the passives filled in, specifically the Concentrated Barrier passive, it gives you a free damage shield for blocking when you block until it is no longer able to withstand the damage. But then on the back bar we have Shatter Spike Mantle. This is a really nice skill that can put a sticky fire dot on the enemy if they get hit with the initial fire wave. This will also increase your damage done by 100. That's not specific to any skill, that just increases your damage done by 100. And then it will also give you major resolve for 20 seconds, increasing your resistance by 5,498. And the damage from the flame dot is pretty substantial, especially when you get landslide ramping up and you increase that damage with the perfected cruel flurry. That is really going to ramp up with this. Then we have Resolving Vigor to give us minor resolve and give us a heal. You could possibly change this out to a scribed skill that might give you a better burst heal and still give you a minor resolve. That is an option. Possibly lean into like a Magicka version if you can. That would maybe help with sustain a little bit. And then we have Poison Injection on the back bar. This procs the Dragonstar Arena weapon. This does poison damage directly up front, and then it puts a dot on the enemy for 20 seconds. And while that 20-second dot is persistent on that enemy, you're going to get that bonus damage from the Caustic Arrow arena weapon. And then this skill does 120% more damage against enemies that are below 50% health. Then we have Gravelord's Sacrifice, increasing our Necromancer abilities and our damage over time abilities by 15%. Then lastly, we have Vault. I want to cover this in a little bit of a detail because this is something I've not used very commonly because I don't run bow builds very often. But this will create a poison sticky dot on the enemy. It's not a an area of effect. If you hit this on a target, as you can see, it's not in an area. It's stuck on the actual dummies itself. So that is also going to be affected by Cruel Flurry as well. So that is another thing that really hits hard on this build, is this back bar vault skill. It's also a nice kind of jump away from your enemy and get some distance, as you can see. It's pretty helpful in PvP if you can fire that off. And then on the back bar, we have Tide King's Gaze from the Arcanist. This is here to proc the Psychic Lesion passive on the back bar. So I've got Herald of the Tome on the front bar with Recuperative Treatises and with Tide King's Gaze. And then I also have Gravelord's Sacrifice on the back bar here, and then Mystic Siphon and Venom Skull. And then the only spot I have for Shatter Spike Mantle is on the back bar. This is basically, I went through a lot of different builds options to see what was the hardest hitting third major resolve. I started out using Winter's Embrace, and the chilled proc was just not hitting that often, so I switched to this, and this really ramped up the damage quite a bit on the build, so I highly recommend using the Shatter Spike Mantle. This is a really good one to implement. So I've got the skills, the gear, the CP, and the champs of applying status effects, the skill bar, all of that. Closing statements. Every stat presented on this is meant to be just a guide to show you what the build can provide. Every player running this exact build is going to benefit from that. So you just need to be able to make sure that you set the skills where you want them on the build. You don't have to set them up just like I do here. Always move your skills to where you're familiar with them. But I do have these set specifically. For example, these 2 bow skills have to be on your back bar, and you want to be mindful of having Gravelord's skills on each bar as well as the Herald of the Tome, so you can take advantage of those Psychic Legion passives. You could possibly flex these around if you wanted to onto the front bar, but this Barb Trap being on the front bar is meant to grab the Fighters Guild passives as well. If you don't have Temporal Guard available, then you could maybe slot the Fighters Guild Dawnbreaker skill here and double up your damage from the passives on that. Extra damage there. But just keep in mind that this is just a tool. If you're really not proficient in PvP areas, then there's not a build on here that's on this game that is going to fix that. Practice the build, make sure you're good at running it so that if you get into a chaotic situation, you don't have to be staring at your skill bar. That's one of the things that I think is problematic for a lot of people is they try to just jump into a build and they think it's going to fix the problem. If you set up your build to where you're not familiar with where the buttons are and you're constantly having to stare at your skill bar, don't follow where I have these set up. If it is important to use all of these, but don't put them on these buttons if that's not something that works for you. Move these around to where you're comfortable with them, but you want to make sure that you follow certain things like having the Herald of the Tome slotted on either bar and Gravelords on either bar, so you take advantage of the class passives. That's really important. And then make sure that you've got your skills leveled up all the way so that you have all the passives filled in, and then all the armor passives as well. That's really important to really make sure that your build is leveled properly. Getting into Cyrodiil and getting these assault skill lines and support skill lines leveled up are really going to help you in Cyrodiil a lot. When you take resources, for example, you have this continuous attack filled in all the way. You're going to get extra damage and recovery for 10 minutes when you take a resource or a keep. So keep that in mind. You're also going to extend your abilities for how far they can activate, and then you're going to gain more ultimate if you kill a player. So there's a lot of benefits to leveling these skill lines. If you're still trying to level a skill line in PvP, go get a Delve boss buff. If you're not familiar with that, go kill a boss that's inside of the Delves in Cyrodiil. That will increase your AP and your progress on your PvP rank. For example, I'm just a corporal on this guy. I have 20 characters, so I can't get everybody super leveled up on that. That's a lot of characters to maintain, but also implement the Colovian War Tort. That will also increase your progress on getting things leveled up as well. If you're not familiar with that, the Colovian War Tort is essentially an XP for your Alliance War skill line, so I would highly recommend using that if you're still trying to level up your Alliance War skills to get those passives filled in. That's really going to help you out a lot in the PvP zones. Just to show you what that looks like, this is a 50% increase to the experience to not only your Alliance rank, but also your Alliance War skill lines. That is a 30-minute buff unless you implement 2 things on your build. You're going to want to make sure that your provisioning Gourmand and Connoisseur is on, and then also your champion tree in the red tree, you're going to want to make sure that you have Rationer on. That'll extend. Rationer does not work with the War Tort, but that's still just good to have anyway. But the Provisioner will extend the 30-minute to a 50 minutes, so that you don't have to keep that up as long as the default is. So if you thought this video was helpful or interesting, please consider liking the video and subscribing to my YouTube channel. I tried to put a build together here that focused on damaging werewolves with poison damage. This still does a great job at just taking resources. If that's more your thing, this will do great with having that damage shield when you get yanked around. And then the damage over time that you can put on the enemies really ramps up hard. The Shattered Paths Signet is really strong in there against the resource enemies, so give this build a try. It's a little bit different than standard. I kind of tried to get a lot of stuff in the build as I could. 2 arena weapons, a monster set, 1 5-piece, and a mythic with trainee and druid's braid. So that's kind of a common setup, but I wanted to get that put together to help kill some werewolves in case you run into them. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you in another video. Bye.